Now we need to find a percentage of a number. But remember, a percentage is really just a fraction with a denominator of 100, and we know how to find a fraction of a number. So first, we need to find 7% of 500. 7% is the same as 7/100ths, and we can find a fraction of a number by dividing by the denominator and then multiplying that answer by the numerator. So, to find 7% of 500, first we can divide 500 by the denominator, so divide by 100. 500 divided by 100 is 5, because we can cancel the two end zeros, and then 5 divided by 1 is 5. So now we need to take that answer and multiply it by the numerator, so we need to work out 5 times 7. 5 times 7 is 35, so 7% of 500 is 35. Now we have 15% times 1000, but remember, times and of mean the same thing, so we follow exactly the same method. 15% is 15 over 100, because percent means we have a denominator of 100. So first we can divide 1000 by the denominator, so divide 1000 by 100. That's 10, because again we can cancel the two end zeros in the division question, and then 10 divided by 1 is 10. So now we can take that answer, take that 10 and multiply it by the numerator, so work out 10 times 15. That's 150, so 15% times 1000 is 150. Finally, we need to find 19% of 800. So 19% is the same as 19/100ths. So first, we can divide by the denominator, so divide 800 by 100. That's 8, because again we can cancel two end zeros in our division question, and then 8 divided by 1 is 8. So now we need to take that 8 and multiply it by the numerator, so we need to work out 8 times 19. 9 times 8 is 72, so 72. 1 times 8 is 8, plus 7 is 15. So we have 152 as our answer. Now we need to find a percentage of a number which is not a multiple of 100. So first we have 28% of 650. Remember, a percentage is a fraction over 100, and we know that to find a fraction of a number, we can divide by the denominator and then multiply by the numerator. So first, we can divide 650 by 100. That's 6.5. Now the way I've taught this is that when we're dividing a whole number by 100, is we can put the decimal point on the end of the number, copy down the decimal point, and then, because 100 has two zeros, we can move the digits 2 squares to the right. But we don't need zeros on the end of decimals, so 650 divided by 100 can just be written as 6.5. Now the other thing we can do when we're dividing whole numbers by 100 is just imagine the decimal point on the end of our number, and then instead of moving the digits 2 squares to the right, we can move the decimal point 2 squares to the left. So if you look at my red cursor, we start with the decimal point on the end, and then to divide by 100, we move that decimal point 2 squares. So we get 6.50, which we know can just be written as 6.5. But now that we've divided by the denominator, we need to multiply by the numerator. So we need to work out 6.5 times 28. Remember, when we're multiplying decimals, if there's one decimal place in the question, there will be one decimal place in the answer as well. So that we don't forget, let's start by copying down our decimal point. Now, 5 times 8 is 40, so 40. 6 times 8 is 48, plus 4 is 52. Now we can cross out our working and write a 0 in our second answer line. 5 times 2 is 10, so 10. 6 times 2 is 12, plus 1 is 13. Now, if we add up our answer lines, we get 182.0. But we know if we have 0.0 on the end, we have a whole number. So we can just write our answer as 182. Now we have 85% of 360. So 85% is 85 hundredths. And if we start by dividing 360 by 100, we get 3.6. We can do that by putting the decimal point on the end, copying it down, moving the digits, and then crossing out the end 0, because we don't need zeros on the end of decimals. Or we can imagine the decimal point on the end, and then, because with dividing by 100 we have 2 zeros, we can move that decimal point 2 places to the left, so we get 3.60, which can just be written as 3.6. So now we need to multiply that by the numerator, so multiply by 85. Again, we need to copy down our decimal point. 6 times 5 is 30, so 30. 3 times 5 is 15, plus 3 is 18. We can cross out our working, write a 0 on the end of our second answer line, and now 6 times 8 is 48, so 48. 3 times 8 is 24, plus 4 is 28. 0 plus 0 is 0, 8 plus 8 is 16, so 16. 1 plus 1 plus 8 is 10, so 10, and 1 plus 2 is 3. So we get 306.0, or 306, as our answer. Now we have 24% of 350. 350 divided by 100 is 3.5. You can put the decimal point on the end, copy it down, move the digits and cross out the end 0, or you can imagine the decimal point on the end and move it 2 places to the left. So that's 3.50, which we can just write as 3.5. Now we need to multiply by the numerator, so multiply by 24. We copy down our decimal point. 5 times 4 is 20, so 20. 3 times 4 is 12, plus 2 is 14. We cross out our working, write a 0 in our second answer line. 5 times 2 is 10, so 10. 3 times 2 is 6, plus 1 is 7. So we can add up our answer lines and we get 84.0, or 84, as our answer. Finally, we have 35% times 320. But remember, times and of mean the same thing, so we use the same method. 35% is 35 hundredths, so we can start by dividing 320 by 100. That's 3.2, because either we can move the digits and ignore the 0 on the end, or we can imagine the decimal point on the end, and because 100 has 2 zeros, we can move it 2 places to the left. Now we need to multiply by the numerator, so multiply by 35. We copy down the decimal point. 2 times 5 is 10, so 10. 3 times 5 is 15, plus 1 is 16. We cross out our working, write a 0 in our second answer line. 2 times 3 is 6, and 3 times 3 is 9. 0 plus 0 is 0, 6 plus 6 is 12, so 1, 2, and 1 plus 1 plus 9 is 11, so we get 112 as our answer. We can show percentages on bar models. So if we have 100%, we can show a full bar, and then if we have 50%, we can show a bar half the size of that, because 50 plus 50 is 100, or because 50 is half of 100. So if we need to find 50%, we can divide by 2. Now, with 25%, we can show a bar a quarter of the size of our 100% bar, because 4 quarters, or 25%, 4 times, makes 100%. So, if we need to find 25% of a number, we can divide by 4. Now, with 20%, we can show 5 20%s, showing the same size as 100%. That's because if we have 20% 5 times, we have 100%. So 20% is 1/5 of 100%. So to find 20%, we can divide by 5. So how could we work out 50% of 596? Remember, a percentage is a fraction with a denominator of 100, but if we simplify 50 hundredths by dividing both the numerator and the denominator by the highest common factor, we get 1/2, so we can find 50% of 596 by dividing by 2. 5 divided by 2 is 2 remainder 1, 19 divided by 2 is 9 remainder 1, and 16 divided by 2 is 8. So 50% of 596 is 298. Now we need to find 25% of 96. 25% is 25 hundredths, but we can simplify that to 1/4. So we can find 25% of a number by dividing it by 4. 9 divided by 4 is 2 remainder 1, and 16 divided by 4 is 4. So 25% of 96 is 24. Now we need to find 20% of 1800. 20% is 20 hundredths, but we can simplify that to 1/5. So we can find 20% of a number by dividing by 5. Taking the first 2 digits together, 18 divided by 5 is 3 remainder 3, 30 divided by 5 is 6, and 0 divided by 5 is 0. So our answer is 360. We can show percentages on a bar model. So 50% is half of 100%, because 50 is half of 100. So our 50% bar is half the size of our 100% bar, or 2 50% bars are the same size as one 100% bar. Now we can also show 10 10% bars, because 10 times 10 is 100. So our 10% bar is 1/10 of the size of our 100% bar. Now for 5%, we can see that if we have 5% 20 times, we have 100%. Also notice that 5% is half the size of 10%. So if we have 2 5%s, that's the same as having 1 10%. And if we show 1% bars, we need 100 1% bars to be the same as 1 100% bar, because 1 times 100 is 100. And this is useful because if we want to find 50% of a number, we can divide by 2. If we want to find 10%, we can divide by 10, because 10 10% bars are the same as one 100% bar. Now, if we want to find 5%, we could divide by 20, but that can be quite tricky. So it's easier to find 5%, to halve 10%, to find out 10% by dividing by 10, and then divide the 10% by 2 to get 5%. And if we want to find 1%, we can divide by 100. So let's say we need to find 35% of 320. We can represent this on a bar model by showing 320, so our total quantity, as one large bar. And the way we've learnt to find percentages so far is to first divide by 100 and then multiply by the percentage. So we can show 100 1% bars. So to solve this question, we can first divide 320 by 100 to get 3.2, and when we divide by 100, that's the same as finding 1%, so we can colour one of our 100th bars. Then we multiply by 35, and that gives us our answer. And what we're doing when we multiply by 35 is taking the 1% 35 times. So, because we get 112.0, we can represent what we've shaded in blue as 112, and that's our answer. But there is another method to finding 35% or finding any percentages. Instead of thinking of 35 1%, we can think of 35% as being 3 10% and 1 5%, because 10 plus 10 plus 10 plus 5 is 35. Now we know that to find 10%, we can divide by 10, and 320 divided by 10 is 32. So instead of the 10%, we can write 32 on our bar model. Now if we want to find 30%, that's 10% 3 times. So because 10% is 32, to find 30%, we can multiply 32 by 3. That's 96. So we can show 96 on our bar model. But then we need to find 5%. Remember, 5% will be half of 10%. So to find 5%, we can divide 32 by 2. That's 16, so we can write 16 on our bar model instead of 5%. So now, because we want to find 35%, we can add what we got for 30% to what we got for 5, and 96 plus 16 is 112. So you can see that we get the same answer whether we first divide by 100 and then multiply by the percentage, or we can get our answer by finding 10% by dividing by 10, multiplying by 3 to find 30%, and then adding 5%, which is half of 10%. Now we need to find 99% of 300. So we can show our whole quantity of 300 as our top bar, and if we're finding 99%, that's finding 99 hundredths. So we can show what we're finding in blue, and then the other 1% we've shown in red. Now to find 1%, we can divide by 100, and 300 divided by 100 is 3. But now, because we know that 1%, like this 1% that we have in red here, is 3, we can work out 99% by taking our total quantity and then subtracting the 1%. So 300 minus 3 is 297, which means that 99% of 300 must be 297. And notice that's a lot quicker than finding that 1% is 3 and then multiplying 3 by 99. we'll still get 297 if we work out 3 times 99, but subtracting the 1% from the total quantity is a quicker way to get our answer. Now we need to find 51% of 600. Now we could divide 600 by 100 and then multiply by 51. Or we can show 600 as our total quantity on the top of our bar model, and 51% we can represent as 50% and 1%. Now to find 50%, we can divide by 2, and 600 divided by 2 is 300. So instead of 50%, we can write 300 on our bar model. But now we need to find this 1%. To find 1%, we divide by 100, and 600 divided by 100 is 6, so we know that this 1% on our bar model must be 6. So we can see that to find 51%, we just need to add what we got for 50% to what we got for 1%. So 51% of 600 is 306. Now let's find 90% of 240. We can show 240 as our total quantity, and if we're finding 90%, we can show 10% bars, and 90% means we need to find the quantity of 9 of those bars. Now to find 10%, we divide by 10, and 240 divided by 10 is 24. But we need to find 90%. Now there are different ways that we can do this. If we know that this 10% is 24, then to find 90%, we can just subtract 24 from our total quantity, and 240 minus 24 is 216. The other way of finding 90% is taking our answer to 10% and multiplying it by 9, because we can see that we have 9 10% bars. That gives us the same answer. So 90% of 240 is 216.